Let me ask you real quick about the economic empowerment message, because that was really kind of at the heart of, well, that and the faith-based angle of it.
Yes.
What is it? Explain for the audience what that's about exactly.
Right. Well, I believe that economic development through the church can be one of the fastest ways of revitalizing our inner cities, our communities, and also taking away the concern that many people have about generational poverty and crime in our inner cities. And it really lies on the fact that if we get people converted, changed, they become Christians, discipled appropriately, then they'll want the best for themselves and their families, and that they'll be agents of change to transform the most blighted areas in our cities and in our states.
You're in a unique position being a Democrat. I don't know why I put that in quotes, but a Democrat.
It's all right.
A born-again believer. And you're in a couple different worlds, if you will.
Yes.
I mean, you know, politically and spiritually. And
Yes.
how does that work for you in terms of what your message can be to both kind of people that may be a bit liberal and Democrat, but also you've got the conservative Republicans as well within the black community?
Well, here's the funny part. I really feel like on national issues, I am a dyed-in-the-wool conservative in terms of my values worldview. Practically speaking, though, in Washington, D.C. and Maryland, where the primary base of my ministry is, those areas are 80-some% in Maryland and 95% Democratic in the region. And when I began to really work for protecting marriage in the public square some years ago, I found one famous person, won't call their name, who leads an organization of blacks, asked me the following question. Well, Bishop Jackson, I understand what you're talking about marriage, but I need to ask you a question. I said, what question? He said, what party are you? I said, well, I'm really an independent thinker, but I am a registered Democrat. I was only registered Democrat because you vote in the primaries, you get a vote, make a difference, and I was for marriage. So I had to put it to him this way. I'm for Bible-based views that can transform our community. And then, so he said, well, he basically told me if I had said I was a Republican on that discussion, he would have questioned everything that I said after that. And then I also said to him at that stage, and I don't want to offend your listeners or viewers at all, but I said, I am not going to try to talk to you in this call about the presidential election and some other things.
Right.
And I want to talk to you about the fact that we have got to change the way people are starting to look at the institution of marriage, and we've got to get their minds refocused. And he could see that. And in that particular, after that conversation, he led his group to get behind marriage, and that was one of the reasons that Prop 8 passed and really defined marriages between a man and a woman, is because this powerful churchman got involved along a conservative line of thinking because it was right morally, right biblically, but he had some hang-ups with his allegiance to the Democratic Party.
Let me ask you real quick about the war on poverty, because, you know, the
Yes.
Democrats will say, look, there's been successes. Republicans, conservatives say it's been an abject failure. So,
Yes.
So where exactly do you believe the war on poverty either went right or wrong, and how that's affected the African American community?
Well, I think it went wrong, way awry, when it started rewarding people, in a sense, for living lifestyles that were not conducive to the community's growth. In other words, if I give single mom a financial incentive to not get married because I got more money and perks if the man's not in the house, that actually encourages family breakdown.
Right.
And so what we see today versus the 60s, you might have had 80% of our babies born to intact families. Now you've got closer to 80% babies born out of wedlock. And so there's been a gravitation because of political decisions and public policy toward a unscriptural kind of lifestyle. And sociologically, we know if you're from an intact home, you're going to do better in school. If you live in an intact home, you're not going to wind up with the same kind of juvenile delinquent rates. You're not going to wind up in poverty or in prison. And so I think we have been done a disservice by that government as God equation. And that's a little intense language, but that's, as a theological person, that's how I see it. Many liberals, many in the Democratic Party, who are not blue dog Democrats, kind of social conservatives, almost lift government in the nanny state, if you will, to a status almost of God. Whereas the conservatives tend to want to give personal freedoms and liberty so that people, under the guidance of God, can find their own destiny. And the rewards that come with taking risks, etc. The middle ground between these two extremely different views is that there does have to be some kind of temporary safety net that helps people who start off with a disadvantage, who perhaps haven't had the right kind of choices and chances in their lives. But I think that look at government as the answer to solve the race problem, the poverty problem, education problem. We don't have enough government, we don't have enough money.
Yeah. Let me ask you, I know this is the Lord's work for you, obviously,
Yes.
but politically, where's the Republican Party been as it relates to African American communities? I mean, it's been, they
Yeah,
look at the
out to
numbers.
lunch.
Yeah, out to lunch. Well, that's what I want to ask you about. I mean, where have they been and what do they need to do?
Well, I think if you look at white evangelicals in general, their heart has always been in the right place in terms of personal giving, personal engagement in their faith, personal compassion, off the chart, A+, hurrah.
Right.
In terms of what is perceived as corporate political engagement, and to the minority community, they see folk who don't want to get involved, or don't really care, a lack of heart engagement, or even understanding with the problems. So I see several people in the Republican Party now who embody a different kind of ethos. I would look at Rand Paul as being somebody who gets the issue of incarceration, prison problems, that is huge in Black and Hispanic community. He gets economic policies geared for the city. I look at people like Mike Huckabee, who is now a TV star, but when you listen to him, you almost hear somebody with the heart of a pastor and because he trained for ministry, a very clear view of, from a biblical point of view, of what it takes to create a compassionate society that has freedoms. And I look at people like Brother Rubio from Florida, heard him talk about both his faith and pragmatic political issues. So there's a new generation of people who are emerging that could shift and change the image. But they have not, I think the Republicans have not been comfortable talking about race. They have not been comfortable talking about poverty, and I think it's hurt them.
What do you think? You mentioned a few folks there, Rand Paul, Rubio,
Yes.
others. When I mentioned this name, what's your reaction? Dr. Ben Carson.
Ha ha ha! Well, let me tell you a true story. I sat on a board with Ben Carson for a particular university, and I will just say it. He's on the board of Regent University, who just rotated off. Ben Carson did. In this community, though, he literally did miracles. There are members of my church whose children needed brain surgery, and folks basically wrote them off that they would not survive, that because of Ben Carson's, the grace on his life professionally as a medical doctor, he was an instrument of God. But I will say that he also is someone who has no guile as it comes to speaking on political issues and issues of the nation. He is a bright star that could be a factor. He, I think, needs or would need someone to help him navigate the political world. Because what's attractive to him, about him, to me, and to many people, is that you have that sense that he is still has that commitment to healing that he comes from as a doctor, and that he has a genuine concern that has not been, how can I say it, polluted, perverted by an agenda, financial agenda, or just a pure ideological agenda, or somebody's whatever the special interest group might be that would try to woo people to go in certain directions. And the shame would be that he would stay out of politics. I think he needs to get into politics. That Mr. Smith goes to Washington kind of a thing, I think really is what we need in America today.
Let me just wrap up and ask you, kind of go back to my original question, but let me take it a step further, which is you talked about specific steps in there that need to happen. And I know there might be a 10, 15, 20 point plan, but kind of synthesize it for me. What are the 2 to 3 specific things that can be done in African American communities to bring about this economic empowerment that you talk about?
Well, I think the number one thing that churches need to do is to get involved in empowering entrepreneurs within their circuit. And in order to empower them, I think combination of investment strategies where members learn to save money, learn to invest money, and then learn to be involved in venture capital kinds of efforts. Number 2, churches themselves can create a combination of for-profit and non-profit corporations. I think this is critical. Floyd Flake, a Democrat in New York, raised the economic values in a whole part of the city by having a classmate of mine who graduated from Harvard Business School the year ahead of me, actually. Has been on his staff for years, ran his church when he was in Washington. That's a model. So churches have got to do that and use these kind of businesses to help disciple, train people. A third area and final area that I'll mention of the 3 is they really need to take on education and in more after school enrichment, or private school education as part of their work. So in a sense, 3 pillars of empowerment have to be at the root of economic development strategy. One pillar has got to be education. So however that looks like, after school, whatever. Another pillar is that economic empowerment piece I talked about, where you start businesses, have investors that can help small businesses in a region. And another pillar of empowerment is personal growth and empowerment, where people become informed and engaged in their region and their city. And if you build strong people who receive the blessing of the Lord, and as our Jewish friends and Jewish roots teach, Jews for years have believed that people who were consecrated to God would receive blessing. And it was great if you make money as long as you make a contribution. That foundational view has got to become a part of our urban areas, not some idea that somebody owes me something and that they got to give me, they got to make up, they did, the culture, whatever. That's got to change.
A pleasure. Thanks, sir.
Question. Sorry, one more thing. Breaking news came in when you guys were talking.
Sure.
Eric Holder just announced that he's going to step down. So.
To step
Wow.
down.
Yeah.
Finally,
well, it's
finally.
replacement. So, just I don't know, some quick thoughts you might want to ask We'd love to get your thoughts on that.
This just in.
This just in from a piece of paper.
Yes, thank
Coming
you.
down the wire.
Well, what is your initial take on this? I mean, boy, he's been in so many different controversies.
He
everything
sure
from
has.
Race relations, really. What about race relations specifically, or what's your take on this news?
Well, I have to say, first of all, that I have not been an Eric Holder fan. That I've felt that starting with marriage and certain other issues, the Defense of Marriage Act, for example, that by not enforcing the law of the land, that he actually has helped contribute to the erosion of the institution and a shift in the culture. I also feel that his uneven-handed approach to immigration under this president and this administration, many more people were deported early on than under George Bush. And then you say, well, we're for the Hispanics, but you create a problem by lack of, or how you've enforced the law concerning immigration. And you create problems by one place here, you over-enforce, another place here, you don't guard the borders. I mean, I mean, it's a mess. So I am thankful today, if I can say that way, that he is stepping aside. I don't think that, as I look on whole at his policies, that he has been fair, clear, consistent. On the other hand, I wish that if a transition was being made, he could have done it earlier. Now at this point, it's almost like he's going to become a lame duck attorney general anyway. So I relish in the fact that someone else is going to get a shot, but I wish it had come earlier. I hope that doesn't sound too harsh,
Not at all.
but that's my honest opinion.
Thank you, sir.